The lesson.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go. We got the man, Jake Biz, 750 Rebels in Brisbane. Beers beats in the biz. How you doing?
Yeah, good, bro. Good. Been a long time coming.
Yeah. There's been a bit of back and forth, but we finally made it happen.
That's it, man. That's it. It's what it is. We always make things happen, man. That's how we do it.
And I guess, as someone that runs a podcast themselves, you would know better than anyone else about how some interviews you can make happen in a week or two.
Yeah.
And others
Yeah.
can take a couple of months. Some could maybe even take a couple of years,
Dude, man, some people you can lock in and then the next, then on the day it's over and done. Yeah, man, it's a pain in the ass. I know what it is. And, Ben, honestly, I appreciate the time you've taken with me because I know we've gone to make this happen on numerous occasions and stuff like that. And yeah, man, it's dope to be finally sitting here doing it, man. It's long overdue.
And look, you've obviously got a pretty deep history. You've been around for a minute, early 2000s to my knowledge. It might even go back further than that.
Yeah.
But before we get into all that, the Beers Beats and Biz podcast, man, congratulations.
Yeah.
That's really,
Thank you,
that's really taken off and become, one of, if not the prominent Australian rap podcast in the country, man.
Yeah, man, it's pretty crazy. I mean, honestly, man, prior to us doing it, it was really only you guys doing what you were doing. There wasn't a whole lot going on, I know there was, there's a few other different things, bits and pieces happening, definitely radio shows, obviously, but yeah, man, it's grown into something. It's sort of grown beyond anything that I initially imagined it to be. It's been hard to keep up with it almost. It's been pretty crazy.
What was the first episode?
Dude, the first ever episode was Bigfoot, and we recorded him in late 2018. And I think we did the Bigfoot episode, and I remember, man, at the time I was just like, I don't know whether I can do this, we actually recorded 2 or 3. We recorded a dude called Mike Reed prior to that, but we were set up on a dodgy camp table and all that sort of shit, and Mike had jewelry on and stuff, and just the audio was all fucked up. But Bigfoot was the first ever episode. He sat down with us, and that was late 2018, man, when we sort of kicked that off. And we've had a lot of breaks, a lot of things have happened in between, late 2018, I think September 2018, something like that is when it all sort of teed off. And we've taken a few breaks over the course of that time, but yeah, man, we're fucking trying to get consistent with it and stay at it and, be far more professional with it, man, because obviously, we've kind of seen the potential of it now. Initially it was just, just go. It was kind of all systems go, but yeah, late 2018 is when it kicked off.
And then so because I was listening to the Shazlik 1 episode. Is that the most recent?
That's our latest episode, man. Yeah. Then the COVID kind of gripped Brisbane, and man, I didn't get COVID. I got sick. I got like a 24-hour bug. But then Russ Insidious, he got the COVID. So, so we had, we were set to go following Shaz. We had 2 guests lined up for 1 week, and we had to just pull the pin. Just couldn't go down the studio. With my work, I've got a day job and shit, and I've got to be conscious of. I work with, I do support work, so I work with a good friend of mine, but who has no immune system, so we got to be careful about how we navigate this shit, regardless. I mean, I sort of said, man, fuck, 18 months ago, man, dude still got sick, dudes got up and had to go to work, there was no kind of there was no excuse for it, but these days it's a different world, man. We got to navigate what we got to navigate, and it's sort of put a bit of a dampener on the, the opening week of our year, but yeah, I mean, as of recording this, Shaz was last week, so yeah, he was our first episode back. We had to take this week off, but we're back in the studio tomorrow. So yeah, man. Yeah, we're just trying to navigate that COVID like everyone else. It's crazy.
So what episode number is that Shaz one?
Ooh, Shaz, 86 or 7? 87, I think.
Wow. And so you've had, and that's all different guests? You haven't had anyone in twice?
No, we've had Delta on twice. So we had Delta for a part 1, and Delta was just incredible, man, and we just couldn't get through it all in 3 hours, so he came back for a part 2, and we've also had just a good friend of mine, Ken Oath, on twice. And Ducats, dude up here, Ducats, young dude, not even that young, man, like mid-30s, but a Krishna dude, and just good energy, man. I fuck with Ducats, and I fuck with what he does, and yeah, I think they're the only people we've had on twice. We've just had those 3.
Bigfoot being the first episode, when it came down to doing that, what was the actual thought process behind launching it? Like, why is it that you decided to do this?
Because no, man, I didn't see anyone else doing it. You know, like, man, honestly, podcasts. I discovered podcasts via Robbie Edelson's blog, uncut.com. And I discovered the Combat Jack show and Juan Epstein and all that. And I was standing in a warehouse printing stickers. You know, I was a screen printer by trade. And like, you know, obviously working on rap. Like I've always said, man, work just facilitated the life beyond it. That's all it did. Like it was a job, it was a paycheck, so I could go fucking make music, write raps, do everything outside of work, pay my rent and all that sort of shit. And I was actually doing the radio show with Chubbs up here. I was doing Fat Tape, and it was sort of coming to the tail end of it. And I used to say to Chubbs, I'd be like, man, we should be doing a fucking podcast, you know, because I was listening to Combat Jack, and I was thinking, man, he's documenting what was in that city, in New York City, in LA, and, you know, documenting so much culture, and I didn't see it being documented here that way. You know, we were reaching a point here in Australia where this shit's now a couple of decades old, you know, like, you know, we've had people making music, you know, painting, all that kind of thing since the mid-80s, you know, at the time of starting. And so, dude, like, I mean, we're talking fucking 3 decades now, you know, so, and no one was talking those stories, man. We had the Triple J hip hop show, we had the community hip hop shows, but who was talking to those artists, who was getting those stories? You know, there's more than one way to engage with art, you know, with music, piece on a wall, you know, a dude spinning records in a club, you know, there's more than one way to engage with that. And that's by, you know, I think hearing the story behind it, you know, the story of how that came to be. And in some ways that's as fascinating as the art itself, you know. That's kind of how it came about, you know, and it was definitely inspired by the Combat Jack show and all that kind of thing, man. Just hearing that and those podcasts getting me through the tail end of this job that I was still in, because I've since left that job a long time ago. But yeah, like, you know, that shit, like throughout the mid to late 2000s, you know, really got me through, and it was inspiring, man, listening to those, you know, like I'd be hearing, you know, any random dude, like not even all rappers, you know, like he was talking to someone like a Jessica Rosenblum who used to run nightclubs in the 80s in New York City and then was a manager, you know, used to run Stress and all this kind of thing, and was all that, and you know, like it was just hearing those stories, man, hearing crazy old stories and shit, and that to me was inspiring, you know, and I know firsthand that existed here, you know, like I was there when crazy, amazing albums were being made, like when Band in Queensland was being made, and we toured, you know, we performed the stage's set launches, and you know, like, you know, we were there for amazing moments in history, and I think there's room for those stories to be told.
With the 80 plus episodes that you have shot to date, which are like, you know, it's hard to pin it down to one, which are the ones that off the top of the head really stand out for you so far, and why?
In recent times, man, like the podcast has kind of been like, just like sort of going from strength to strength in recent times. Like there's ones, man, like the first podcast where I thought we smashed it was DJ Catch back on episode 6. I think that was the first time we sat down and we just had this conversation that just seemed so natural, you know, it didn't require editing, you know, and I was talking to friends prior to that. Like, it's not like I'm talking to, you know, but I was, you know, man, like doing it. Like, I can't listen back to the shit, you know, because I become too self-critical of it. I'm like, man, fuck, you know, like I can't listen back to them. But that was the first one where I just sat down and went, oh man, like this was all right. We got to the end of it, we just chatted for 2.5 hours, and it was like, man, we're chucking this out edit-free, no edits. And then, you know, it was probably a few episodes again, like when we had Len One on. He'd just started the Miles Ago thing, and, you know, talking to Lenny was like talking to a mentor, and, you know, just sitting down and just kicking it, having Trem sit opposite me, you know, just kicking it. In recent times, talking to Johnny Jewel, talking to Murder, like some of the Melbourne graffiti writers that I used to I'd be like, man, these dudes, you know, like these dudes were at the forefront of something that I don't think that they were even aware of at the time, you know, like graffiti culture was so young globally, and they were innovating here in this, you know, in Melbourne. They were innovating style, you know, so talking with those dudes, and even like talking with Shaz the other week, man. We actually spoke to Shaz just before Christmas, and then we released it as our first episode back for the new year. And like just getting those stories, man, like they're the ones, I mean, Delt's like, dude, you can go through the list, man. We've had some amazing conversations. I mean, you know, like I think we've given people crazy moments. The Hype Twins, like we had the Hype Twins come in, and it's a difficult listen. It would have been an easier watch, but they're two identical twins that hadn't seen one another and have a history, man. You know, like they have, you know, a certain history. You know, you go back to the episode, they talk about it themselves, you know, with drugs and all that kind of thing. And they hadn't seen one another for 10 years as of recording that. And they'd hopped in a car together, like with fucking 3 other people, travelled down to the studio, and that was their first time seeing one another in all that, you know, in a decade almost, you know. So, you know, like that was pretty crazy. Man, yeah, off the top, like they're some of the favourites, man. You know, but talking to everyone, like, you know, everyone deserves their spot, you know, like when we're live here from No One Network, we had Kyle Golly and Nerve on real early, you know, like we had, you know, mad dudes, man, like mad dudes, all kinds of dudes. But yeah, I mean, we definitely focus on the history, but also the legends in the making, man, because there's dudes just creating history now, you know, like dudes are doing it in the moment. And Beers Beats in the Biz, the lesson, you know, there's other people, like, man, we're creating history just by documenting that history in a way.
The lesson.
927. Oh, yeah.